something I've never heard people talk much about. Orphanage, or the orphanage function. There are going to be a lot of people who don't make it through, a lot of adults that don't make it through. They're not going to make it through for a number of reasons, not the least of which is they can't live in a new world. They're not adaptive enough. And they're going to be little kids. And those little kids, there's not going to be anybody left to care for them. And if we aren't going to have some sort of idea where are the little kids and who are going to take care of that, then I would argue strongly that maybe I don't deserve to survive if I'm not thinking about that. And it's a hell of a burden, but we're in a hell of a situation. And I just ask you to think about in your communities, what would happen to that little child if their mom and daddy didn't make it through? Because there's got to be a plan for that, and the plan cannot simply be let them die. The plan cannot be hand them over to the forces of darkness. That just can't be the plan. Educational programs. A lot of homeschoolers here, people who aren't homeschooling, they're familiar with it, they support it. Well, guess what? That's going to have to go on. You're in the middle of insurgency doesn't mean your kids don't need to know their 3 R's. They got to know their history. Science is going to be somewhat challenging to teach, but there's going to be a lot of experiments being run. A lot of use of the scientific method in chemistry and physics and all sorts of stuff. But seriously, as you're thinking about your community plans, think about what is going to happen to the education function. Because if dad is out on watch or on patrol, and mom is in a rest period because she's doing 8s with 2 other ladies, keeping the kitchen and the wounded tended to, who's going to be teaching that kid his or her times tables? Without math, without reading, you're an ape.
We're not people.
And that's the point, exactly. We're not people. And it's not coincidental that the government schools have been working for decades now to turn out a bunch of people who are neither numerate nor literate. We got to fight that. We got to change that in our own community. We got to have a plan for it. It doesn't have to be anything more than a set of basic readers. There's great homeschool materials in hard copy. Put aside, your lotto ticket came in, or you just nicked somebody out of an extra $100 for that gun that you thought you're going to get 6 on. Put aside a set of at least K through 8 educational materials on reading and writing and arithmetic. If it's not for you, it'll be for somebody. Robertson Homeschool. Brock was saying $180, $220 pre-K through college level. And that's a software package, right? But you can print from that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And cheap. In fact, they don't recommend reading out online.
Yep. And again, that's something else to think about too. And I don't care whether you abscond with it from work or whether you go out and buy it, but paper's going to be a real short supply item.
Yes, it is.
Paper and pencils are going to be real short supply items. What's that?
We can make our own
Yeah, we can.
paper.
I'd just as soon have a big old stockpile.
That's right. And you know what? Paper doesn't expire, neither do pencils.
What's that?
Paper doesn't expire, neither do pencils.
Exactly. They don't dry up or anything else.
And if you think that won't be barter,
Yep.
I got the
Sir.
Make great insulation.
There you go.
Really, if you're stocked.
Yep. Exactly.
Yep.
So think about that educational function. Another thing, and I was inspired on this point by the post that was put up by a new blogger. One of Sparks 31's students has started a blog called I think it's Communications Infrastructure, but if is that what it is? And it goes by the handle dial tone. But he had a good piece on scavenging electricity. The bad thing happens. Choose your bad thing. It happens while you're at work. Well, what are you going to do to get home and power your communications to get home, and what are you going to take on the way out the door? I like the euphemism salvage, having been greatly influenced by the movie The Great Escape. I always like Headley the Scrounger. Call it scrounging, call it salvaging, call it harvesting, whatever you want. But be looking around now where that, that big old solar panel with big old set of deep discharge batteries is powering the this way to the FEMA camp sign that's on the highway.
That's right.
Might be a pretty good idea to know where that stuff is.
What about the solar panels and the deep charge batteries
For the
cameras?
DOT cameras.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I know where all those are around my
You know,
area.
better source.
Good job. Yeah,
All those moron signs they put out for the arrow one way.
Yep.
that's right.
Yep.
They
All
have
that stuff.
batteries and a solar cell that'll power those batteries.
That's right.
All that
With a
stuff.
trailer hitch.
Keep in mind.
Yeah.
Keep in mind in your community. If you're not seeing it now, think about seeing it and think about noting where it is. Because at the end of the day, there is going to be a lot of, and I hate to use this term because we're the good guys and we don't do the bad things, and the whole point of my talk is to do the good guys and don't do the bad things. But there's going to be a lot of looting.
No.
And I understand that. And there will be people. And now here's the really shocking part. There will be people that are focused on something other than Charmin and malt liquor. Those, my friends, are your competitors.
That's right.
Because I'm confident that everybody here has enough Charmin, enough malt liquor. I'm not so confident that I, speaking for myself, have enough solar arrays or enough deep discharge batteries or other things that be scrounged from places that are going to be trashed and wrecked.
Yep.
So keep in mind your salvage ideas. So let me recap and wrap up. We'll talk a little bit more after I wrap up for questions. But we talked about 5 things: mass feeding, covert convalescent care, the orphanage function,
Yep.
educational programs and stocking for that, and salvage. I told you that my premise was choose to be good. Probably a better way of saying it is choose to be wise. Choose to know when people and situations are deserving of that kinder, gentler side of you. I don't want to talk like George the Father, but kinder and gentler is not a bad phrase for what's coming.
That's right.
And you should do that, one, because it's the good thing to do, it's the right thing to do. You should do it because hungry people, desperate people are dangerous. They're dangerous to you as informants, they're dangerous to you as combatants and not even organized combatants, just mobs. Mobs are a bad thing. They're dangerous to you for disease.
That's right.
Try to have a plan to deal with desperate people. And know that those desperate people, some of those desperate people are going to be blood. Some of those people are going to be people that you are obligated by family ties or otherwise, and you're going to have to be hard. You're going to have to be doing stuff that is not politically correct now. Like there may need to be hysterical men and women that's going to need a good pop in the face to calm them down. But desperate people are a problem and have a plan to manage that desperation. Never ever forget that law enforcement and government has no obligation whatsoever to protect you, and that would be true even if you were just normal everyday sheeple. Folks at this group, we're the enemy in their eyes. Let's just call it as it is. We're the enemy in their eyes. And they certainly have no desire, let alone any obligation to protect you. And finally, this ties in with our first speaker. It is ultimately a battle of hearts and minds. The reason why the freedom movement hasn't caught more fire than it has in the past decade is because times are still good, relatively speaking. There's no need to talk to anybody or listen to anybody about rattling the cage or making waves when you're still getting your paycheck and there's still food in the pantry and the lights are still on and everything else.
Facebook still works.
But as you know, Facebook still works, exactly. But, and this may be a shock and this may be upsetting to some people, Facebook's not always going to work. That pantry's a lot thinner than it was 10 years ago. That bank account's a lot thinner than it used to be, both from an effect of deflation, an effect of no yield, lower no yield, and the soon-to-be coming bail-ins. That is, if you got money in some institution other than the good bank of Serta or Posturepedic, they're going to be coming taking that money from you.
That's right.
And that's not tomorrow, that's going on today. And it's not coincidental that there are national domestic military exercises going on at this time. It is not coincidental, and it ties back to trying to establish order after people realize my pension's gone, my 401k's gone, there's no money in my savings account, and my checking account is locked up, and I might be able to get $100 every couple days or $200 every couple days.
I can't get on Facebook.
And I can't, and worst of all, insult to injury, I can't get on Facebook. But why do we do this? It's hearts and minds. And at that point, which is coming soon, there are going to be a lot of potential converts. And we got to have something to say to them.
Thanks, sir.
We got to have something that's coherent and realistic to say to them.
Gotta have a plan.
And part of that coherent and realistic plan is just, well, can't do much about that, but we got some soup over there, and if you go over there, use the hook to pull that canteen cup out of the boiling water where it's sitting, because that's your sanitation. And you can reuse the canteen cups, because everybody should have multiple canteen cups. And that fork over there, or that spoon, is in boiling water as well. Scoop them out. Let them cool down a little bit. Get yourself some food, because I know you haven't eaten. And let's talk a little bit. Sane, rational minds are going to be at a premium.
They already are.
Well, but the worst is yet to come, right?
That's right.
And being regarded in your community as one of those voices of sanity, one of those voices of reason, one of those voices that, well, we can't do a lot about that, but what we can do is we can make sure that we put a tarp over your roof. We've got an extra tarp. We can get a tarp over your roof so your invalid mother who can't get out of the bedroom that you had to leave alone here to come down here to the volunteer fire department. I like that 5-mile grid. That's a really nice idea.
Yeah.
That volunteer fire department, which will wind up being, at least in most rural areas that I'm familiar with, both now and where I grew up, that is going to be the de facto community center.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that if that's in the hands of FEMA, that there's an alternative community center set up at a church or a school or something else. But being one of those rational voices of reason that's thought ahead and thought about these non-kinetic, these non-shooting, these non-political things is probably the savviest political move that anybody can make.
Food is the most powerful politics in a needful world.
Yeah. And I would add pure water on top of that. So all those of you who went away from the last PATCON and bought a boatload of chlorine, still good.
Yes.
Still good. And clean water is going to be a super thing. With that, I'll just remind you of the tale of the fable that I began with, that it is a battle between two wolves within each of us. And both because we're talking about our souls and other people's souls, and because ultimately we're the good guys, have that good wolf. Thank you for the time. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you to Brock.